Hello again. We are back, and this time I'm going to go over a very quick, well, maybe not quick, but surface level look at how you can start incorporating Substance Painter into your Blender material workflow. Now, one disclaimer off the top, I am by no means a Substance Painter expert. I've only started using it very recently, and only for a couple of projects. So this is not going to be a be-all, end-all tutorial of how to use Substance Painter. If you are interested in that, then I would refer you to the Substance Painter website, and you go to academy.substance3d.com, and they have a ton of free courses. I would encourage you to start with this Getting Started with Substance Painter. It's 3 hours. It's like 13 videos. Yeah, 13 videos. It takes you through the whole process of adding textures and grunge and weathering and all sorts of stuff, and even some rendering to this lantern. It's a great course. It's easy to understand. The sections go by quick. Definitely a great place to start. And then if you want to go even further, I've been referring to CG Boost Academy, and they have a Substance Painter Launchpad course that does cost $60 US, but well worth it because they go into great detail and get amazing results. So, a couple of resources here. If what you see here kind of piques your interest and you want to learn more about Substance Painter, absolutely, please do. You can do some amazing things. But this is just going to be a very kind of focused, this is what I did to get the results that you see on the screen now. So, all that being said, let's get into it. So, in order to go to Substance Painter, we need to prepare our model for output. And I'm just going to focus on the vending machine. You can certainly texture this the same way you did everything else. But if we do want to do Substance Painter, which, by the way, you can get for free if you're a student for a year, and that can be renewed, or you can do a 30-day free trial. And if you pay for it, an indie license is either $20 or $30. I can't remember which. I can never seem to remember which, but it's not much, so you can pay for it for a month and kind of see if you like it. What I do is I use it. I pay for it for a month when I have a project that needs it, and when I don't need it, I don't pay for it. Saves me a little bit of money. And then if you're doing freelance work, you can always just bundle that cost of software into your invoice, and it very directly pays for itself. Okay, now let's actually start. So in order to prepare this model and get to these results, okay, you can see this is all done in Substance Painter. We have scratches that are along the edges, which is kind of procedurally generated. Same thing here on the rim. We've got a nice carbon fiber material, as well as kind of a worn, I believe it's it's called a glass film dirty mirror is the name of this shader. The numbers and the words I did in Photoshop after the fact, which we'll go over. But it's a really nice cohesive thing and relatively quick to do. So let me close out the finished version, and here's where we're going to begin. So what we need to do to prepare for Substance Painter is we need to give everything a material slot, because Substance Painter will use whatever materials that we assign in Blender and apply our shaders to that. So we need to tell it kind of what slots and kind of reserve the space for the materials. I also want to do a little bit of kind of organizing here so that we don't have 20 different materials slots, which would equate to, I don't know, 100 different textures. I'm trying to save a little bit of space. So I'm going to combine a few things. So if we look at, let me go into UV editing mode here. Go into object mode. I'm going to select the top, the back, the bottom, this little base pedestal, and these supports. You can see that they're actually all in a collection. And we'll just select the base last. And we go into edit mode on those. We can see that they are all laid out in one UV map. So when you combine them, we don't have to repack the UVs. I'm just going to hit Control J, combine those all into one object. And then, let's see, we have body, which we'll leave as one object. The shelves we can leave as one object. I don't believe... Select everything. Okay, there's some overlap here with the door. Looks like the door is actually packed into something else. So let's see if we can figure out what that's packed into. Oh, is it into the shelves? No. I'm not sure what that door is packed into. But we can ignore the door because that's just going to be a basic metal texture, so we don't need to worry about bringing that into Substance Painter. So I think what I'll do to turn these on is we can hide the door. That's easy enough. Okay, and then this is all one, select everything. This is all one UV layout, so that's good. Okay, so we've got that. Now we need to start assigning texture slots to help break it up. So I'm going to do this a couple of different ways. The first, with the main body, we'll go into local view here. And we will go into our materials. We can leave the kind of emissive surface. I'm going to leave that alone. Get rid of the UV test grid, add a new material. We'll call this VM body main. And I'm also going to have a secondary color for the insides. So we'll add a texture slot or material slot. We'll call this VM body inside. Okay. Now we need to assign the inside faces. So I'm going to hover over the inside, hit L. Remember, I've got delimit by seam turned on. So I can kind of select the big islands here. And let's see, we also want that and that. Okay, that works for me. So I'm going to click assign. And then there's one more we need to add, and we're going to call this, whoops, assign that slot. There we go. Okay, and then this last slot, we're going to click new. This is going to be vending machine, body, rim. That's going to be this little detail around the outside here. So I'm going to hit L, L, L. Excuse me. Grab that, and then we want to grow the selection. Actually, do we need to? I don't think we need to. Yeah, because I want that surface as well. Let's just make sure we got all the way around and we didn't grab it. Whoops. Oh, no, that's right. That's good. And then we also got to come around on this side. Just hitting L a bunch of times there. Let me also turn on screencast keys for what it's worth. There we go. Okay, so we've got all of that. That's going to be the rim. And I'm going to click assign. We don't need to worry about actually setting any of the surface settings, because that's going to be handled by Substance Painter. We just need to kind of call out the material slots. So if you want to check, make sure you have everything assigned, we can go to body with everything deselected, and then click select. Okay, and that's good. Inside, select. That's good. And rim, select. Good. So we've got that. Get out of local view. And then we can select our shelves have their own material, so that's good already. I'm going to grab the kind of the support. I guess I'm calling it support, but we'll grab this object here, go into local view, and we'll, let's see, first we'll remove the test grid, new material, we'll call this VM support outside, and a new material down here, we'll call this VM support inside. Okay. So by default, everything's going to have the outside. Now we just need to select the inside islands, which are just going to be those three. Click assign. And then we do also need to Oh, it looks like I've got a few extra things selected. So I don't want those to be the outside. So we do want those to be outside, so I'm going to assign that. And then I believe on the bottom here, if we select inside faces, you can see we've got these faces selected. So let's use circle select. Select those. Let's deselect those faces. And then I just need to hit Control plus to grow that selection. Okay. And then we will assign that to the outside as well. Okay. And then we've got these little pipe support things. We can give those their own material. Is actually, yeah, we'll give them their own material, but we're not going to use Substance Painter for them. I don't think we need to export full maps. Maybe we will. We'll see. But this will be VM support. Brackets, for lack of a better term. And then let's make sure we grab those, putting these little rims here, and click Assign. Okay, so we've got those. So as of right now, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 materials, which means we're going to have 6 sets of textures coming out of Substance Painter, which is going to be 6 sets, and then we'll say 4 textures per set. That's going to be 24 materials. And then we have this keypad. Now, this keypad is going to have a lot of materials assigned to it, because we're going to have one for the outside. I'm going to local view here. We're going to have one for kind of the outside in the rim, one for this front face plate, and then one for the screen and the buttons, and then a separate one for the rim of the buttons. And I don't want to have all of those be individual textures, because if we're looking at just these button faces, we don't need a full texture map just for these faces. Now I could unwrap these separately, but there's another thing that you can do, and it's going to use something called Vertex Painting. Now, without getting too much into Vertex Painting, basically we can assign colors to individual vertices. It doesn't apply to the final render, but it will allow us to tell Substance Painter that we're breaking apart sections. So just follow along, and hopefully this will make sense as we do it. So we're going to give us a new material, and we'll call this VM Screen. Okay, and we're going to go into a texture paint workspace, and I'm going to actually change this from texture paint to, you don't even have to go into texture paint workspace, but we're going to go into Vertex Paint mode. Okay, so we're in Vertex Paint mode, and I'm going to tab into edit mode, and we're going to start with I'm going to select everything. Okay, and back in Vertex Paint mode, let's make sure that we have Paint Mask enabled, which is this little box right here. We're going to go up here and select a color, so just anything that is going to be bold and distinct, easy to see. I'm going to check a bold blue, and then if we go to Paint and Set Vertex Colors, Shift K is the shortcut. Okay, so we've set everything blue. Great. Now, I'm going to tab into Edit mode, and I'm going to hover over the screen area, hit L to select it. Now, my seams actually go up the side of the walls here. Let me also set my clipping to 0.01 so I can get in a little bit closer. Okay. And we'll also turn on screencast keys again because I changed viewports and it wasn't showing up. There it goes. Okay. So you can see that this selection went up the wall, so I'm going to hit Control minus a couple of times. Okay, once I have that, tab back into edit mode. See that that's selected, so I'm going to change my color. I'll go like a bright purple. And I'm going to hit Shift K. Okay, now that's its own color. And now you can go Select this faceplate. Let me actually double tap A to deselect everything. You can tell it's selected because you won't see any of the edges. I'm going to select this front face, and then I also want to grab these rims. So let's see. Go into edit mode. Whoops. Undo that. There we go. Make sure we're grabbing those rims all the way around. And we are. Tab back into Vertex Paint. Change our color. This time we'll go with like a bright red. And Shift K. Okay. So making all these areas distinct. Now we have the keypad. Now the keypad actually, well, we'll give it a different color. It's probably going to be the same surface. I actually don't remember what I did. So we'll make it a different color, and we can always apply the same material to two different parts. That's fine. Okay, so we're going back into edit mode. Double tap A to deselect. Hover over here and select that. Okay, that looks like we have selected what we want. Tab back into Vertex Paint. We'll change the color. We'll go to like a bright yellow. Shift K. Okay. Back into edit mode. And now we have these buttons. So let's do the buttons next. L, L, L. Just hovering over all of them and hitting L. Tab back into Vertex Paint mode. And we'll make these like teal. Okay. And Shift K. All right. Now the last thing is these little rims on the buttons. So in edit mode, deselect everything. And then we want to make sure to grab the inside and the outside and the top rim. So just hover and hit L. We'll zoom in here. L, L, L. Once we get all of these, then we'll be just about ready to get into Substance Painter. Okay. So we've got those. Tab into edit mode, change our color. We'll do the green now and hit Shift K. Okay. Now let's go back into our kind of default view. Now we can't see our vertex colors, but if we go up to our viewport shading for solid, we can change the color from material to vertex, and now we can see our colors. Okay. So it looks a bit garish, but this is really just so that we can kind of distinguish things in Substance Painter. So we've got that. Looking great. And now what we can do is we can select all the parts that we want to bring into Substance Painter and just click and drag across. Looks good. Let's go to our preferences and add-ons. We want to make sure that you have the FBX format import-export add-on enabled. I can't remember if it is by default. I just want to call it out and make sure that you have it. Once you have that set, then we can go to File, Export, FBX. So here we're going to name it something that you can remember. Call mine Cyberpunk Vending Machine Record. There we go. Let's make sure we have just limit to selected objects turned on, and everything else should be good. Okay, so we can hit Export FBX, and we're good. So now I'm going to minimize Blender. I'm going to open up Substance Painter. So just take a second. Okay, there we go. Now in Substance Painter, I need to set up a new project. So we're going to go to File and New. Okay, now template we want to keep at PBR metallic roughness because that's what Blender uses. File, we're going to navigate to and select our FBX that we just exported. Click Open. going to set the document resolution to 4K, set the normal map format to OpenGL, because that's what Blender uses. This way, when you bring in the materials, we won't have to invert the green channel for all the normal maps. We don't have to worry about UDIMs or anything else, so I'm just going to click OK. It's going to take a second. Load in the file. There we go. Now to navigate, we can middle click and drag. To navigate, shift middle click will move the or pan your view around, and then you can use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Okay. You can see here we have our texture set list, all the different textures. You can also, by the way, reorganize and rearrange your materials just by clicking and dragging the panes around. Okay. And then we can also double check our window views, and you can just see kind of what views that I have enabled. The toolbars. Okay. So like I said, this isn't going to be a Substance Painter like in-depth tutorial, just kind of get you at least trying stuff out. So the first thing we need to do is go to our texture set settings, scroll down, and we need to bake mesh maps. So what this does is this generates a series of textures that Substance Painter uses to create procedural effects. So that edge wear that we saw earlier, things like that, Substance Painter needs to do some calculations to figure out what that is. And this is what we're doing here. So we want to set our common parameters output size here to 4096. We can bump the dilation width up to 80. I want to make sure that we have the ID map. I want the color source to be vertex color. That's important. I want to click apply to all. I believe everything else should be good, at least for our purposes. Really need to worry about ambient occlusion. We can up secondary rays a little bit. Yeah, okay, so that's good. Once we have that, we're going to say bake selected textures, and it's going to go through and it's going to bake all those textures for all of the material slots that we have. So it's going to take a little bit of time. It's got 63 textures to bake. You can see as it goes through, you can kind of get a sense of what each one is doing. So the curvature is going to kind of highlight the edges. And you can see the normal map is that normal, traditional kind of blue color. Ambient occlusion will kind of darken the interior corners, things like that. So I'll pause it and let this finish. Okay. Textures are all calculated. Now we can actually get into adding some materials to our scene. So we're going to start with, we can go over to the texture set list, and I'll click on vending machine body main. See, by default, it has a layer 1 in there. We can delete that. We don't need it. We're really just going to work with the preset materials and smart materials, and we can make some changes to them. So for the materials, I'm going to scroll down in smart materials, and we can actually change the size, the preview size here. But if we scroll down, there's a section of kind of worn steel. Here we go. So we have a bright layered, and we hover over it for a second. You can see that it'll give you an even larger preview. And there's a number of different kinds, and what we can do is we can kind of preview them. If we drag in, let's say, steel painted chipped, and we'll drag it onto our model. Now you can see as I hover over different areas, those material slots are being highlighted. Okay, so here's the rim, here's the outside, there's the inside, and then the back, the shelves. The vending machine is showing up as 1, but we'll deal with that here in a minute. So I'm just going to hover over the section of the model that I want to be that material and let go of it. Just click and drag it on top. And here's what we get by default, which is pretty awesome. Okay. Really easy. You can see that the corners are worn down. Okay, we've got some difference in the bare metal versus the paint and how metallic and reflective it is. The scale's looking pretty good, actually. So that's nice. It's always good to model to a scale and then have it work. Right, but we can make some changes to this. One, we can rename it if we just double click on that name, but I'm going to leave it. You can also click on this folder, and you can see what the material is actually made of. Okay, so we have our base metal layer, we have our paint layer, we have a rust layer, and then we have a sharpen layer. And you can go in and change these colors. So on the paint layer, if we go there and then go down to our properties and scroll down, we have this base color. Now we can change the base color to anything that we want it to be. Okay, so maybe you want a bright purple machine. Well, there you go. You've got a bright purple machine. Okay. We can also, let's say the rust. Let's say we want to change the color of the rust. We can change that here. We can also go down into the mask of the rust, and you see this mask editor. If we click on that, it'll take a second to load. But now we have some parameters that we can adjust. And let me also change this color because this color is a bit much. Let's go back to something a little bit more subdued, I think. Go kind of there. Okay. So we'll click on this mask editor, and we've got some, here we go. Scroll all the way down. We've got scratch width, scratch masking, double scratch, dust intensity. Okay, so if we want to increase the width of the scratches, okay, you can see like right here, these scratches are what we're adjusting here. And we can dial that way back if we want them to be less prominent. The masking. Okay, and this might take a second to update. We can play around with all these. We've got a dust slider. So let's see if we can find a place where that dust is going to read. Probably up here, I'm guessing. We increase that. I'm not seeing a huge difference there. We can, it's basically just play around with the sliders and see what each one does. Each smart material is going to be built a little bit differently. But you can get some pretty great results. Let's see, anything else? Maybe we'll adjust the balance and see what that does. Okay, you can see as we bring that balance up, it's getting a lot more of those scratches, and as we bring it back, a lot less. Okay, we can go to the paint layer and do the same thing. Go to the mask editor. And let's see. You can adjust these scratches as well. So you can really kind of fine-tune exactly what you want your material to look like with very little effort. So that's the first kind of option here. You can click on that folder to collapse it and click on the eyeball to hide it. Let's say maybe we want, instead of the paint chipped dirty, maybe we want this scraped dirty. We can apply that, see what that looks like. Okay, so this is definitely more of that dirty. The paint is a little bit more intact. It looks like this has been outside for a while, so that's kind of cool. We could also look at, I mean, if you wanted this to be made out of wood, you could do that and see what that would look like. This wood ship hull Nordic. It'd be an interesting choice for a cyberpunk scene, but who knows? The other thing that I should note here, because the wood makes this really obvious, is you may need to adjust the scale. So to do that, it'll be at the top at the properties for just about every layer. We've got the scale slider, so let's say we bring this up to 3. Now what we're going to need to do is adjust the scale on each of these sublayers. But as we do this, it should scale down. The pattern will be probably the most significant one. Maybe not. Oh, we got base. Yeah, there's a bunch of sublayers in here to adjust the scale, so it might take a little bit of digging, but you can adjust the scale that way. Bring the scale way up. You can see that some of those layers are adjusting and some of them aren't, so make sure you adjust them to all, otherwise Gonna get some weird results. But I'm gonna delete the wood layer. The one that I actually ended up going with was the steel painted rough damaged, which I believe is this one. Yes. This is the one that I ended up going with. But again, if you liked the scraped dirty instead, you can go with that as well, which I might prefer this one. So maybe we'll go with that for this version of it. So I'm going to delete the other two, and let's do a little bit of modification. Really, I just want to change the paint color. So I'm going to go to the paint layer, scroll down to the base color, and I went with kind of a faded gray blue. Okay, kind of like that. Maybe we'll go a little darker. Okay, and then let's go up to the dirt color, and let's change that as well. Let's maybe desaturate that a bit. Yeah. Okay, so I want something that's going to pick up with the light, all the different colors of light in my scene. So I think that's going to work pretty nicely, actually. I'm really happy with that. Okay, so that's our material. I'm going to collapse that down. And then what we can do is first I just want to see how I feel about the scale. The scale's probably a little too large. Go to 3. See how it does. It's probably the dirt layer that we really need to worry about here. But there might be a way to adjust global scale. Like I said, I am by no means an expert in Substance Painter. I'm not even intermediate. I'm a beginner, but I figured if I show you what a beginner can do in Substance Painter, then you guys should feel pretty confident about being able to also achieve similar results. All right, let's move on. So we've got this applied to the outside. Let's say we also want to apply it to the outside of kind of the top and the back. And what we can do is right-click, copy layers. You see Control-C as a shortcut. And then we can go to our support outside, delete our layer 1, and just Control-V and paste that same material there. Now everything matches up nicely. That's great. Okay. Now for the inside, what I ended up going with was this chrome blue tint. I'm just going to click and drag that onto the inside back. Okay, I'm just going to leave it at default. I'm not going to worry too much about it. Also going to assign it to those insides. Okay, that's looking good. Now for the shelves, I went with glass visor, which I don't believe is a smart material. And scroll down. Oh, no, it is a smart material. Okay, so just drag that onto the shelves. So it's got this nice little blue tint and some edge highlighting, which I like. So there's my shelves. You could bring in the monkeys as well, and then give the monkeys their own kind of unique individual textures if you wanted one to be like a gold monkey or a leather. It's a fun way to display multiple materials and shaders. Okay, so we've got that. I'm not going to worry about this band up here because that's the part that's going to be Emission in Blender. But we do have this rim. And so what I did for that was back to the steel. I did steel painted chipped dirty for the rim. Layer 1 doesn't have anything on it, so you don't really need to delete it, but I will anyway. And then I just need to change the color of that paint. So go to the paint layer and change the base color to this really bright yellow. Okay, I think that's a nice contrast there. I'm happy with that. Okay. The other nice thing about this, about Substance Painter and kind of the procedural nature of it, is you can see that there's, up on these top vertical surfaces, it's relatively clean, but as we move down towards the bottom, the intensity of this dirt picks up, and so now at the way bottom, we've got a lot of dirt. Just kind of a more natural way to have that happen. And we didn't really have to do anything to get that result. So that's pretty great. All right, so let's look at the keypad now. So the keypad first, we can scroll up to our vending machine, and we want the screen. That's right. So we set out our material IDs. And I think the first thing is I'm just going to paste in our base material. See, okay, there it gets applied to everything. That's great. Now we want to kind of change some areas of this. So for the screen, the actual screen area, I used glass film dirty mirror, which is right here. So I'm going to click and drag this, and now you see that it wants to change the whole thing. But if we look down here in the bottom left, if we control drag and drop, it will apply it to a portion of a mesh. So I'm going to control, and now we can see our IDs, our vertex colors. Okay, and I'll just click and drag and drop that onto that portion of the mesh. It'll take a second to update, and there we go. I'm going to also apply this to the buttons. Okay, and what that's going to do is it's going to give a little bit of like this nice wear look to it. So I like that. And now, oops, I don't want camo. Definitely don't want camo. Let's go with a nice kind of, maybe this brushed aluminum for the rims here. Take a second. Okay, so now we've got that nice brushed aluminum. It is going in the wrong direction. Let's see what we can do about that. Scale, intensity, and length. For the base. Rotation. Let's rotate it 90. That didn't really seem to do it. Let's try... Maybe we rotate the scratches. Nope. Let's rotate everything 90 and hopefully that works. Or we leave it or we find something else. I'm not terribly concerned about this. Yep, alright, I think we'll just... I don't like the vertical scratches, though. That kind of annoys me. So I'm going to go over to materials, and we'll just use a pure aluminum. Hold on, control. Get rid of the other aluminum. There we go. Okay. So we'll just leave it at that. Yeah, that'll be fine. For the kind of main body area, I'm going to go with carbon fiber. Now for this, we definitely need to adjust the scale. Now this is not a smart material, it's just a regular material, which means our adjustment options are much simpler because we don't have a bunch of layers. So now if we adjust the scale, and I think 30 is a pretty decent scale there. Yeah, that looks great. So there's our carbon fiber. And then what we can do, we just have this main area right here. We can kind of decide what we want that to look like. And I think, like I said, I don't remember what I did. I'll go back to Smart Materials, and we'll probably just do with that dirty mirror again. Because I like that look. I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, okay. I think we'll go with that. I want to check one more thing down here. I'm going to change the aluminum. I'm going to make it steel. That's what I did before, and that worked a little bit better for me. Take a second to load, and there it goes. Okay, get a little bit more a little more variation there. Okay, so that is applying and messing with materials and smart materials. There's so much more that this can do. I am barely even scratching the surface of this. But it gives you kind of a sense of what can be achieved with very minimal effort here. So now the last thing we need to do is export this out of Substance Painter and bring it into Blender. Actually, it's not the last thing. We also are going to want to apply our numbers and words, but let's get this out of Substance Painter first. We haven't saved this, which was a mistake, but we should save this. So we'll save as, and we will call this Cyberpunk Street VM record for me because I'm recording this. It'll save it, and then we can go to, or once it finishes saving, take a second. Okay. Now we can go to File and Export Textures. Now, Substance Painter does not have a default Blender output template. I've got one in here because I added it myself. So what you'll need to do is under Output Templates, click plus. We need to name this. So we can right click and rename. I'll call this Blender 2 because I already have one. Excuse me. And we need to tell it what maps we want it to output. So we're going to create an RGB map, and we want this to be base color. Oops. There we go. And we want this to be RGB channels. And we need to name this, so we're going to name it based off the texture set, and then we'll say underscore base color. Oops. Do that. Can't remember what the appropriate naming convention is. Maybe just color. Let's see. You want, oh yeah, we do want base underscore color. Okay. Base underscore color. All right, so that's our RGB. And if we look back up at this preset, I did the same thing for metallic. So we've got metallic right here. And except I used, instead of RGB, I used gray for the metallic grayscale and the roughness. So we will create a gray one. Call this metallic. Or metallic. Oops. Make sure we got that. And then we can copy this. Paste that. I will link to a video down below. It's a little 5-6 minute video from CG Boost that goes over this in more detail. But once you get all of your settings here, since we are already at 45 minutes, and I'd like to keep this under an hour, hour and a half. Well, I'm guessing it'll be like an hour and 10, but once you have all of your presets set up, then we can go over here to settings. We can choose our destination. So for me, that's going to be in this project, in my textures folder. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this Substance Painter Vending Machine Record. I create that, select the folder. And then what we can do, we've got PBR metallic roughness, which is good. File type PNG, that's good, so we'll have transparency if we need it. Size is going to be based on texture set's size. We can also override that. So I think we can probably get away with 2K for most of them. Yeah, I think we'll go with 2K. The nice thing about how this is procedurally generated is that we can upscale and downscale at the export. So it makes it really easy if we need to just come back in here, we just re-export it at 4K. Then what I want to do, I don't need to export anything for cable emit yellow. So that's fine. Oh, actually, I'm going to save settings. We forgot one little piece, and that's right back in here. So let me go up and find something that might be appropriate for that. Probably like a bare metal, I'm guessing. Let's see, all the regular material. Well, got some iron damaged. Maybe go with like a rough steel. Yeah, that works. That works great, actually. Okay, go back to the export window. We've got everything selected. Now what I want to do is I want to go into each of these, and I don't want to export height or emissive. Just because I don't need those maps and I don't want them taking up space in my project. Now, if you don't have any emissive texture set, it won't export it anyway. It'll just skip that texture, so you don't necessarily need to do this. I'm just saving space on basically the height maps because I don't need those. We're not going to do any displacement. Any displacement maps in Blender. Okay, so we've got all that. We're going to click export. It's going to go through and export these 4 textures for each material. It goes pretty quick. And once you have it, say it's done. So we can close that out. Make sure that we save this one more time. And then I'm going to close Substance Painter and we'll go back into Blender. Oh, was there an error there? The input map opacity needs, that's probably okay. We'll find out. Maybe we can look at our project files here and go to our textures and our record. And we can see all of our textures that were exported. VM body main, base color. Okay, and there's what it looks like. So we can see all of our UV islands. This is what we get. And then what it does is it extends the color out from the edges of the islands so that if you get a little bit of like overrun, we don't see a weird border. So it looks weird here, but it actually works really well in Blender. So now we need to apply these in Blender. Let me also turn off our vertex color here. And then we will go to our shading viewport. Orbit around here. Let me change the world opacity to 0. And we need to apply these textures. So we'll start with the body of the vending machine. And we'll go to our materials, go to body main. And then in our shader editor, we will select our principled BSCF node. I have Node Wrangler add-on enabled. And Control-Shift-T, navigate to our textures. And this is, again, our main body. So it's going to be these 4 textures right here. I will click Principled Texture Set. It'll take a second to load. And this is what we get. Now what we can do is just double check and make sure that our naming is right and we got the correct textures in the correct slots, which we do. And we don't have to invert the normal map channel because we exported for OpenGL. And we're pretty good. So we're just going to go around and do the same thing for the rest of this. Grab the, oops, I'm going to leave it on the main body. Go to the body inside, select our principled node, Control-Shift-T. We got main, and this is inside, main body inside. Bring that in. And then we've got the rim, Control-Shift-T, main body rim. And there's our nice yellow rim. And the colors match pretty close too. That's nice. For the outside here, and I'll just keep doing this. So VM support outside. And I'll pause this and do this on the rest of the textures. Okay, here we go. So we've got everything in here. Let me turn that off. And it's looking pretty great. Okay, so the last thing that I really want to do is just add some text and numbers to our keypad and our screen. So for that, we're going to open up this color texture in Photoshop. So let me open up Photoshop. And also need to find our correct texture. That's going to be the screen base color. So I'm going to right click and open with Photoshop. Okay, there we go. So there's our color texture. And I'm also, I actually have already done this, but you'll want to export the UVs for the screen. And so I've got those right here. I'm going to just drag those into my Photoshop document. Okay, so this will help me know exactly where everything is, so I can place my textures accordingly. Now, if I open up, go to my recent documents here, I do have this already done. You can kind of see what I did. Basically, I added the text. I found a font. This one's called Graph 35 plus Pix, but I found an appropriate font. I added an outer glow effect. Okay, down here. This is what I set it up. It's just blend mode screen. Give it just a slight glow. And we can just click and drag this over to our new scene. Okay, there it is. Control T. We'll scale this down. Position this pretty close. Okay. Return on that. And then we also want to grab our numbers, which is not in this document. So let me find those real quick. Might be in this document right here. Yep, there they are. So I've got all of my numbers laid out. I'll drag those into my document as well. Now to do these numbers, I just made the background black and gave them a bright yellow stroke. So we can position these as well. I figure out what the correct scale is here. A little bit smaller. Maybe something like that. We can go down just a little bit more. Too much. And I think that'll work. Okay, I'll hit return. Now, in this case, the stroke, because I scale it down, is probably too much. So let's bring that size down to 2 pixels. Okay, we will go with that. I suspect this might be too small. We probably should have done this at 4K, but we'll go with it. I will also add in, oops, don't want that. I want to add in a solid color. I'm just going to add in a black. Actually, I don't need to do that because we have our color right here. So here's our color. And then I believe, so let me just double check. Maybe I didn't. I thought I used some blending modes here, but maybe I didn't. We can play with blending modes, see if it's going to work a little bit better. I mean, we will have kind of the roughness over the top of this to help sell it. So maybe we're fine. But we can kind of sample a few, see if let's multiply. There's overlay. Overlay is not bad. Maybe we'll go with overlay. Okay, so we've got that. Let's go ahead and just save this. I'm going to save this. I'll just override it. You might want to save this as a different version just so you have the original. But I'm just going to save it as is. Also save it as a PSD so we can get back to the original, but that'll work. Click OK. And then also save it as a PNG. Click Save. Make sure you have the UV layer turned off so you don't have those lines in your final thing. Click Save and Replace. Okay, that's done. I'll go back into Blender and grab our screen. And I believe, let's see. There's a, yeah, click Reload Images here. Hit N to bring up your sidebar. Node Wrangler, Reload Images. And now we have that. And now we need to set our emission for that. So in order to create some emission, we need to actually add one more texture. So I'm going to go back into Photoshop, and I'm going to turn off the background, and I'm going to turn, see, do we want the numbers to emit? Sure, why not? Why not? We're going to add in our solid color. We're going to make it a black background. We're going to move it to the bottom. And then I'm going to disable my layer glow here and set this to normal. Turn off the effects. There we go. So this will be our emission map. It doesn't need to emit much, but that will work. And I'll hit Save for Web. Just export a PNG. We'll click Save, and we will call this _emission. Okay. So I've got that. And let's minimize Photoshop, jump back into Blender. And we want to import that. So let me go here. This is VM screen emission. So we'll just drag that into Blender. Just move this to the bottom of the list here. And I want to connect it up to my mapping, so it'll be mapped the same way. And then I'm going to drag N here. I'm going to connect the color to the emission. Okay, so now we got that glowing a little bit. That's nice. Okay, you can see that we've got that roughness over the top of it. And I think that's going to work pretty well. So I think that might actually be it. I think we might be done. Let's go into rendered view, see how we did. We don't have any lights in the scene, so let's go to our layout. We're going to click Save on this. Okay, that's saved. And now we can turn those back on, the door upper and lower. Let me give those a quick material here. Let's call this VM _ door. Let's link those materials so they're using the same material. And then I'll just increase the metallic to 1. And maybe dial the roughness back a little bit and increase the anisotropic. I think that'll be probably good enough for now. I'll go back and give that a proper material later, but I don't want to worry about that at the moment. We'll turn on the monkey heads as well. And make sure we turn on our camera and lights. And let's go into our rendered view. Okay. Go into camera view here. Maybe not. Maybe not camera view. Okay, that's looking pretty good, pretty cool. It's picking up the lights from the environment well. Turn everything else on here. Gonna really bring a lot more light into the scene. Okay, it looks like that's everything. Yeah. So the last thing that I did, once I had all of these in there. I mean, I gave all the monkeys textures, but I also went through and first I took the sign. So it'll take a second to load up. Now we have more textures in our scene. But I took this monkey sign and I moved it over so it was centered over the vending machine. That was the first thing I did. And then also, oops, there we go. Got the sign. Go into front view here. And GX, and we can just, oh, I don't have the monkeys parented. Control P, parent with transform. Okay. GX, and we'll just kind of snap it roughly into the center. And I'm also going to move it up a little bit. Okay, so the last thing that I did is added a little spotlight, because I realized as I was looking at this, especially from the wide camera, okay, is that there's not really a focal point to the scene. The eye tends to get drawn to the brightest part of the scene, which in the preview anyway is the store, but we spent all this time in the vending machine, and I want that to be the focus. So what I did is I added one more light. So just to keep it really easy, I'm going to grab this light, go to top view, Shift D to duplicate it, Y to lock it to the Y-axis. I'm just going to move it back here, roughly centered over the vending machine, but also in front a little bit, something like that. And then I'm going to change a few things about this. I'm going to, for the black body color here, we're going to change the temperature. And we can change that to, I'm going to go with 8,000. I'm going to change the size of this to 15 degrees. And in the side view here, I'm going to rotate it, RX. So we're hitting that, and I believe my power was somewhere around, oops, I think I went like 10,000. So let's do that, look at our rendered view, and see how we're doing. Okay, that's looking not too bad. I'm going to load up my other scene here so you can kind of see the more or less finished vending machine look with appropriate lighting, but just to give you an idea of everything that I did. Here's that final result. I did a full-blown 4K render. Took about an hour to go with 1,000 samples and some denoising. But here's the results that you get with some additional depth of field, and we got that new top-down light here as well. But it really helps it feel like a lived-in world that has gone through some wear and tear and has a story to tell of its own. So again, that's kind of the quick and dirty of Substance Painter. It can obviously do a lot more, and I encourage you to look for other tutorials. I've got a few linked down below. You can find other examples of work in Substance Painter and see some really, really amazing things that I hope to personally dive into more in the future as Blender locks up on me. So that'll be it for really all the texturing. I'm going to spend some time off camera and just add some more kind of weathering to my scene. And then later this week, we will get into final rendering and then some post-processing to get a few finished still images for our scenes. So I will see you then.